Well, welcome to yet another edition of Black History Conversations. And judging by the conversation we've just been having to get going, it's a wonder if any of us are still standing after the festivities of and issues that were shared in the Windrush 75 events yesterday. So I'm just going to share my screen and recognise that today we're going to be looking at Bill Hern is with us, and Bill's going to be telling us about some of the more unusual characters who sailed on the Windrush. So welcome to you, Bill. That's brilliant. We're so glad you're with us. I'm Liz Millman from Learning Links International, also the North Wales Jamaica Society. So I'll tell you what we managed to achieve yesterday in Bangor at some stage. And a little later on, I think Garrick Prayog may be able to join us, or maybe Roland Houslin, looking at the activities that have been going on, the myriad of activities going on about Windrush 75. And also we want to know, June Elizabeth Whitesmith Gully, about the latest scandal which you shared with us this week. So we're really, really grateful. We've got our Windrush International Allies Network colleagues with us, and also our Justice for Windrush Generations colleagues. So that's excellent. So gosh, we've carried on this journey since the ship sailed in from the harbour in Kingston. So we first of all looked at the calendar of activities that went on in May. We talked with colleagues in Jamaica. This is the first time ever that there's really been a significant sort of memorial programme going on in Jamaica. So certainly things are beginning to change now. But I'm not going to go through all the rest of the things we've done over the last few weeks. I'm just going to welcome everybody who's with us. I've just mentioned you, Bill, so real welcome to you, and you're going to tell us about how you've got on and all the new things that have come up this week as we've recognised the 75 years. So that's lovely. We've also got our an excellent colleague, Candace Chimbiri. We're delighted to welcome you. We've just been hearing a little bit about the exciting things you've been doing, but today is not the day to share those. But congratulations for all the work you've done, your excellent book on the Windrush, children's book, and your new book. And I'm hoping in a week or two, maybe you'll join us and tell us about that. It's wonderful that we're able to have June Elizabeth Whitesmith Gully join us. June Elizabeth is an activist in Northampton, and June Elizabeth, you're going to have a chance to catch up with us. We've also got Makapi Selassie joining us from Tanzania, and maybe it would be good to try your poem first, Makapi, but just a moment, then we've got David and Roglieve. It's lovely that you're able to join us too. So lovely little crew. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm here in Wales at the moment, where I have to say the sky's a little cloudy, which is so unusual. It's been blue skies and sunshine ever since I arrived here from Australia. Now, sometimes we do an acknowledgement to start the Black History Conversations, but this time I think we're going to ask you, Makapi. Makapi, are you able to perform your poem live, or are you going to want us to try and play the recording? Are you there, Makapi?
Hi Liz, yeah, just running around to go and
Cheers.
find the poem actually, just in case you asked me to read it,
It would
which you
be
have
lovely
done.
if you could do it live. That would be so good. Really, really good. Okay.
Okay, the invoice will be in the post.
The invoice will be in the post, no problem at all.
Okay, yeah, greetings everyone. Yeah, this is called It Bad, Windrush Rhyme. It bad man, it terrible man. What the British government do the Windrush generation? It bad man, it terrible man. What the British government do the Windrush generation? I know business I have to make a statement. From I people first come to England is a hostile environment. Because back in the Caribbean islands, ones were told that the streets of England paved with gold. But when the Windrush generation come at England, lo and behold, them buck up racism, discrimination, and the freezing cold. And the way that them treat we is like them not have no soul. Them not have no soul. Them not have no soul. It bad man. It terrible man. What the British government do the Windrush generation? It bad man. It terrible man. What the British government do the Windrush generation? A long time now them a disrespect. Because after for them so-called World War II, England was one big bomb peck. So them go to the Caribbean and call upon them loyal British subjects to come work, good wages can collect, and a better standard of living once I go get. When them reach here, and nothing like what them did expect. Them find themselves in such a situation where man and woman who did have them good education, pass matriculation, and get them qualification. I work as a lawyer, doctor, tailor, nurse, dressmaker, businessman, and businesswoman. End up at the factory work, bus conductor, work on railway, work at hospital. I was a garbage man in England, Wales, and Scotland. It bad man, it terrible man. What the British government do the Windrush generation? It bad man, it terrible man. What the British government do the Windrush generation? You know how much this hurt? After 40 years in our country, go to school, college, and work. If you find out, say them burn the paperwork, and you have to go find your own paperwork to prove that you have a right to be here. Status gone, job gone, access to the NHS gone, and some go a detention center, and then them fly them gone to a land them not see since 19 long. Them ya injustice ya nothing go on. It a cause a political storm. Oh, you mean keep calm? It bad man, it terrible man. What the British government do the Windrush generation? It bad man, it terrible man. What the British government do we?
It's incredible poem, McCarthy. And thank you so much for sharing it with us and performing that live from Tanzania. Incredible. Thank you so much. And June Elizabeth.
Thank you, Santifana.
Thank you. June Elizabeth and others, I think we need to get our heads together and help McCarthy to present that as so that we can post it on YouTube and it can be used. If that's okay with you, McCarthy, we'll work out the finances later. But it would be great then for that to be able to be shared. And what's so special about poems is that you can share the poem again and again. You as a poet, McCarthy, know that only too well. But I think it's something we need to recognise and to encapsulate just what's bad. It's just in a poem is truly incredible. And my admiration for you as a poet, McCarthy, is really very sincere. And I'm looking forward to you getting back over here, and we might cross paths in the UK over the summer and plot and plan. Thank you so much, McCarthy Selassie. Just extraordinary poet, performer, and generally wonderful person. Rastafari chaplain to prisons in the UK, trainer of prison personnel as well. So we look forward to following up the story about, which I think is overlooked, one of the Windrush stories, and that is the story of the development of Rastafari in the UK. Maybe you'll say a little bit more about that later, McCarthy, but just at the moment, if it's okay, folks, we're going to ask you, Bill, if you're still there. Yes?
Yeah.
Bill, we asked you to be the presenter of our final, if you like, of our Windrush series, although we may ramble on a little longer because the ramifications and the stories that are coming out are just, too interesting. But we asked you to come and talk to us because you've been researching the passengers who were actually on the Windrush ship. And we thought it would be a slightly lighter note to finish on if we heard about some of the other stories that we don't usually get to hear about of passengers on the Windrush. So, Bill, that's the first thing I'd like you to share with us. And then the second thing I'd like you to share is about the things that have been happening this last week, because and more recently, as we begun to find more and more out about these wonderful people and others, no doubt, who came over from before that Windrush sailing and after. So, Bill, I'm just going to pass over to you, and I'm going to relax, and I'm going to really enjoy hearing about this. Thanks so much.
Okay, can we share screens?
Yes,
That...
yeah. No, just a minute. I have to do something clever, which is
right.
a bit daunting at times. I'm not the greatest on the technologies, but we'll get there. Right, okay then. So I'm just going into making you a co-host, and then Bill, you can share. That's just beautiful. Okay, thanks ever so much. That's great. You
Fingers
okay?
crossed.
Let's see how it goes.
Oh,
yeah, looks perfect.
That's a pleasant surprise. It worked. Yeah, what I want to do today is talk a little bit about the myths of the Windrush to start with, and then just talk about some of the interesting passengers that were on board. Very, very difficult to pick out a small number because I've looked at 800 so far, and almost without exception, they're very, very interesting stories. The title there, Do You Want the Truth or Something Beautiful? And I know it's a song by Paloma Faith, but it also sums up the romanticism of the Windrush. The romantic side of it is that, you called and we came and we were welcomed and everybody was happy. And, we'll find that the Windrush passengers were not welcomed. They were not invited across at all. And it's important to make clear, I'm talking about one ship, the Empire Windrush, one journey to the West Indies, the only journey it ever made to the West Indies, and one set of passengers. Because it does get confusing for people when we talk about the Windrush generation, because in later years, West Indians coming across did get different treatment. They were asked to come across for the NHS, London Transport, and so on. I'm against Wikipedia in trying to dispel some of these myths. I cannot stop people saying that the journey began in Australia. The Windrush never, ever went to Australia. Its normal route as a troop ship was from India back to England. And the evidence is very, very clear that the journey to the West Indies began in Tilbury and went to Southampton and then onto the West Indies. So I've tried to convince people, I've tried to convince the National Archives, who should know better, but it didn't happen. It didn't start in Australia. The return journey started in Trinidad, not Jamaica. And in Trinidad, it picked up 194 passengers and then went on to Jamaica. The figure of 492 Jamaicans on board is a bit of a mystery, really. 597 people boarded at Jamaica. 437 went into C class, which is where the traditional West Indian person coming across for employment would have been berthed. But we know that the people who got on in Jamaica weren't necessarily Jamaicans. The 3 Calypsonians, for example, were all Trinidadians. So it's very, very difficult based on the passenger list alone to work out where people came from. You've really got to just research individuals before you can be sure where they were born. The passenger list shows 1,027 passengers. And we know, in addition to that, there were about 280 members of the military who were on board. Only a small number is shown on the passenger list. So already 1,027 is on the low side. We also know there were stowaways, and obviously there were 300 crew as well. The passengers weren't all black Jamaicans looking for work. 168 passengers got in Bermuda, and they were probably all white, and they were dock workers who'd been working in Bermuda for a year on secondment, which must have been a brilliant job after the deprivations of England, to come across to Bermuda and be able to get fruit and sunshine. And they were returning merely to the Chatham area and to the Plymouth area. And I read an article a little while back by a very esteemed academic who was trying to work out where this West Indian community in Plymouth could possibly have gone, because he made the assumption that people that got on in Bermuda were black West Indians. Now, I know Bermuda isn't even in the West Indies, but most people confuse it with the Caribbean and the West Indies. But they were dock workers who were on secondment to Bermuda. And of course, the 66 Polish passengers who got picked up in Mexico, they were refugees who'd been displaced during World War II. So a real mix. There were people going there as part of their work, in the matter of a transaction to carry out, and they were going across for a specific task, and then they'd return to the West Indies. There were people going on holiday. A lot of English people who were working in the West Indies were going back for a holiday. Some of them were returning home permanently, and some of the West Indies were coming across for education. They weren't all coming across for employment. The split between white passengers and black passengers was probably about 50-50. I know we've got this image of the Windrush with only black people on board, but as I say, the split was probably about 50-50. There were 2 stowaways within that 1,027. And again, the National Archives talk about 1,027 passengers plus 2 stowaways. The stowaways are very, very clearly passengers number 1,026 and 1,027. But we know in addition to those 2, 15 were arrested on arrival at Tilbury. And they got a very minor sentence because they weren't breaking any serious law. Their offences were being on the ship without permission and being on the ship without paying. They were in the country entirely legally. None of them were deported. There was never a question that should happen. They were in England as British citizens. As I said, their only offence was being on the ship without permission and not paying. And also we know that a lot of stowaways did evade capture. There's no doubt about that. When we talk to people like Alfred Gardner, he kind of smiles wryly and hints that there were many others who actually managed to evade capture. I also read sometimes that there were only a few women passengers on board. I think there are about 200 women passengers, and I'll illustrate later some of the major ones. We get told there's a guy called Vince Reed was the youngest on board. Vince was 13 and went on to great things, but he was nowhere near the youngest person on board the Windrush. There was a young lad called Aston McLachlan, who I'll talk about later. He was only 8. Vince was 13. But in first class, there were dozens and dozens of babies and children. Again, predominantly white, but there's no question that there were a lot of young people on there. I also read that there were only 3 passengers from the Windrush still alive. That's absolute nonsense. As I say, there were a lot of young people on in first class. I estimate there are about 40 Windrush passengers still alive. I think what people get confused about is only 3 of them are the traditional, I suppose, West Indian who was coming across perhaps ex-RAF. So the 3 that are still around are Alfred Gardner, Delissa Bernard and John Richards. And they're 3 that got their portraits painted recently amongst the 10 sort of Windrush pioneers. Another thing I've found is that first class, again, the National Archives said that a nurse called Ina Sullivan was in first class, therefore she must have had a cabin to herself. That's not true. The people I've spoken to in first class all are astonished to think that they were in first class. The conditions were very, very poor. It was a troop ship, so it isn't going to be luxurious. And a lady I'll talk about later, Joyce Poultney, she had to share with 3 women that she'd never met before in her life. So it wasn't luxurious by any means. Another fallacy is that the tickets were made available at the very last minute. Again, that's quite ridiculous, isn't it? Because what that suggests is that the captain took the ship to the West Indies, let everybody get off, and suddenly thought, oh, the ship's empty. I'll have to get people on board, and I'll have to allow them cheap tickets. The tickets were actually advertised on the 1st of April, before the Windrush had even left England. So it's a complete myth that this was a sort of a last minute shock. The other myth is that the tickets were subsidised. The tickets were £28.10 shilling in C class, and that even now, that's the equivalent to almost £800, and that's a one-way ticket from the West Indies to England. That doesn't strike me as cheap. I would imagine we can get there and back now for less than £800. And of course, the big fallacy is that the Windrush was a government initiative, that we invited the people across. And just looking at a few things here, we know the tickets were advertised on the 1st of April, but 6 weeks later, 10th of May, the Jamaican authorities said, hey, has anyone told the British these people are going to arrive? And you can imagine the civil service panicking and thinking, oh, no, we didn't tell them, did you? No, well, somebody's going to have to tell them. So a telegram went off with the words, I regret to inform you, i.e. I regret to inform you that this ship is on its way very shortly. And later on the 29th of May, the apologies get even more profuse. Very sorry indeed that you and your staff will be put to all the trouble that the arrival of this large number will involve. It is an appalling thing with which to be saddled. So much for the government proactively inviting the passengers across. And on the day the ship arrived, I think we probably all know now that 11 Labour MPs wrote to the Prime Minister and said, this is a wonderful country, we're very open-minded, we welcome people from abroad, but if we welcome too many, there'll be problems. And Attlee's response was, he defended the passengers, but he also used to sort of deflect any worry. He said, oh, people are getting carried away. This ship's had far too much publicity. And then he tells tales, really, because he said they got favourable shipping terms, which I've already explained isn't true. A large proportion of them had money in their pockets because they were ex-RAF and they had a gratuity. Now, that may or may not be true, but a large proportion of the passengers hadn't been in the RAF anyway. I reckon about 150 of the passengers had been in the RAF, and whether they'd really kept all their money for a year or so after receiving it is debatable. So Attlee says these circumstances won't be repeated, and yet in spite of all that favourable treatment, they couldn't sell all their tickets. And of course, we know that Creech Jones said that don't worry, because they won't last more than one winter. One winter in England will be enough for them. And how wrong could he be? So that's the myths that I wanted to dispel. On to more cheery stuff, I think. I just wanted to talk about a few of the passengers. There was a lot of music on board. There were saxophone players, trombonists, pianists, calypsonians, an entire band that I'll talk about later. But the first lady I want to talk about is Mona Baptiste, Trinidadian singer and actor, and the subject of a book by me and David, who's online. So it's a bit of free advertising for us. Mona came to England, and within weeks, she was on the radio. She very, very quickly made it big on the continent. She was probably the highest paid artist in Germany for many, many years. She had a disastrous marriage. She married a public school boy who was also a vicious jewel thief, who'd served 7 years in jail, had 20 lashes of the cat of nine tails. And, as I say, it was a disastrous marriage, didn't last. And she did find happiness. She married an Irishman in 1972 and moved to Dublin. And she died in 1992. But the Irishman, I'm pleased to say, is alive and well and a very good friend. So Mona was one of the people will recognise Mona from the photograph of the saxophone at the at Tilbury Docks with the West Indian RAF members behind her. It's quite an iconic photograph, but she couldn't play the saxophone. Right, this is probably my favourite Windrush story. The man with the double bass in the corner there is called Wayne Armstrong. Now, his real name is Joseph Armstrong, which really highlights how difficult it is to trace some of these people, because a lot of them had nicknames. And let's stick with Wayne. Wayne played in the Delroy Stevens band in Jamaica. They were called the Commandos, and Delroy's the guy holding the microphone there. And when Delroy heard about the Windrush, he was really excited. He had relatives in Liverpool, and he fancied moving across as well, but he wanted to take his band with him. So he had to persuade just about everybody in that photograph to give up everything in Jamaica and come across to Liverpool. Now, Wayne had this ambition. All he wanted to do was play in the nightclubs of New Orleans. It's what he'd always wanted to do. And Delroy persuaded him. He said, look, if you come to England, we're not far from Paris. And, you know, we can go across and play in Paris. That's as good as New Orleans. So, you know, Wayne fell for it, perhaps. Anyway, he got on board the ship and he came across to Liverpool. And amazingly enough, he met this, this beautiful Muslim lady, and they got married, and they had 7 daughters, and they all doted on Wayne. So Wayne virtually never left Liverpool, let alone Paris or New Orleans, but he had an absolutely fantastically happy life. And when he died, they donated his double bass to the Paul McCartney College in Liverpool. And just another thing about his wife, she was actually in the ATS in the Second World War, and she was part of the people that went into Belsen after the you know, after it was relieved or opened. So that's a very, very rare thing for well, very rare for a Muslim lady to be in the ATS, and certainly to be in that sort of situation. But wonderful family, and I love Wayne Armstrong. This one, the little boy is the star in this one. The daddy was on the ship. The daddy's called George Gaynor, and George is from Jamaica, and the little boy is called Mel Gaynor, and he is the drummer in the rock band Simple Minds. So this is a case of where the son went on to great things. Now, he probably got his music ability from George, because George was a trumpeter, and his mum, Robin, who was a black Brazilian, was a singer. So it's just one of the many, many examples of where the children of the Windrush passengers have gone on to really great things. Now, I don't know whether I'm sure you recognize one of these men anyway, but which one do you think looks more presidential? I know you can't answer that, but I reckon the man in the glasses looks very comfortable there. And his name is Ellis Clark. And he was on the Windrush with his mum, and his mum was called Ermentrude. And Ellis was the very first president of Trinidad and Tobago. So that's the sort of people that were on the ship. The talent was just absolutely incredible. Ellis was going across to London for a holiday with his mum and meeting some of the family across there. And obviously here he is, he's meeting John F. Kennedy. One of the sad things about Ellis is that when he became ambassador to the United States, the legislation was such that people couldn't let their house out to black people, to Negroes, and they had to get the law changed for the specific premises so that Ellis and his family were able to live there. And that's not that long ago, you know, that's the 1960s. So pretty horrific. But Ellis went on to, along with Dr. Eric Williams, to create Trinidad and Tobago's independence, really. I mean, he's a great, great man, and you know, well remembered. But just one more about Ellis. I reckon he must be one of the few people to have met JFK and the famous footballer Pelé. And his daughter said to me, "Oh yeah, that's me dad. He's probably telling Pelé how to play football." But he's a really, really famous guy in Trinidad, and a famous Windrush passenger. Mentioned the Polish passengers earlier. This is a group photograph of some of the young children. They were mainly, well, there was only one male out of the 66 that boarded in Mexico, and they'd been displaced from Poland and taken to Siberia. And the journey was dreadful enough. There were a lot of lives lost, and more lives lost in Siberia. And then the Germans and the Russians had a fallout, which released the Poles, but they had nowhere to go to. So these little girls and boys probably marched all the way from Siberia to Iran, then on to India, then on to California, and then ended up in Mexico. So the British government, in recognition of what the Poles had done for them in the war, said, we will welcome the Poles. We will, we'd offer them British citizenship even. So a lot of Polish refugees came across where they would meet their fathers or their brothers, sons, for the first time in many, many years, because the men went off to fight with the Allied forces when the girls and the women and the children went off to refugee camps. A lot of them ended up going to the States. They didn't take up the offer of British nationality, but pretty well. It's hard to imagine, isn't it, how desperate it must have been for them. Again, just showing the sort of diversity of people that were on board the ship. This is a mixture. There are, I think, about 10 Royal Navy midshipmen and a similar number of Americans. They were just having a night out together. But 10 of the people on here were on the Windrush, 10 midshipmen. And that's kind of the cream. I didn't know this, but you might. That's kind of the cream of the Navy. They were the bright young things that were going to go on to the very, very top. And all of the people in this picture, apart from one who was killed in 1951, went on to be really, really senior grades in the Navy. And there's one still alive, and he's in the middle row, third from the left. He's called Don Creamer, and he's a great man. I mean, he's really, really helpful. It's sad to think the rest, every single one of them has gone now, but Don was really, really helpful. And one of the men there, Peter Stanford, went on to be knighted, and he became Commander-in-Chief of the Naval Home Command, which I didn't know, but is the most senior post that's possible. The only thing above that is the king. So it really, really was the cream of the crop there. Again, what a mixture. These guys are boxers, and the man with the man at the bottom of the steps, slightly older than the rest, he's a boxing trainer, manager called Bud Martin. And he went across to Jamaica specifically to identify promising young boxers and bring them back to England. So they had lots of little bouts across there. And he chose 4 in Jamaica. He picked one up on board the ship. So these are the 5 boxers that he brought back to Liverpool, hoping that they would make a fortune and he would make a fortune. Sadly, none of them were that good, and none of them really made it at the highest level. But one guy I will mention is he's down there as Ten Ansell. His name was actually Ted Everall. And after his boxing career finished, he worked in Liverpool as a community officer. And his responsibility was to welcome West Indians and Africans who came to Liverpool, and he'd sort out the benefits, accommodation, employment, and so on. And he worked very, very closely with a famous Liverpool MP called Bessie Braddock, who was a very ferocious sort of woman. And they were very, very keen that the people were welcomed and received in Liverpool. One of the odd things about Buddy Mortimer Martin, his wife was on board as well. So she travelled first class while he was in second class. She was also heavily pregnant. So as I say, none of them went on to great things in the boxing ring, although I wouldn't say that to their face, because I'm sure they pack a punch, but they are just a different set of people. Maintaining the sporting theme, this man wasn't on the Windrush. This man is called MacDonald Bailey. He was from Trinidad, and he had a tough choice to make. The West Indian nations had never ever competed in the Olympic Games before, and they were allowed to do so in 1948. So he had to decide, do I run for Trinidad or do I run for Great Britain? After a lot of angst, he opted for Great Britain. He got to the 100 meters final, and he wasn't very well that day. He finished quite badly. The following Olympics, I think he got a bronze medal in Helsinki. So obviously very, very, very talented runner. The reason he's here is that it's just to illustrate a different type of passenger. His dad was on board the Windrush, And his dad was coming here specifically to watch his son run in the 1948 Olympics. And I know that Ellis Clark spent time at the Olympics as well. So who knows how many of them might have, you know, matched up the trip with the Olympics. So, I mean, oddly enough, any Jamaicans will certainly have heard of Arthur Wint. Arthur Wint had the same dilemma as MacDonald Bailey. Should I run for Jamaica? Should I run for Great Britain? He ran for Jamaica and he won a gold medal. So that was the first gold medal that Jamaica had ever won in the Olympics. This one, again, illustrates the uncertainty of the early days for these people. The lady holding the clock is called Ivor Hilton. And Ivor was a beautician. And she went to Burnley because her husband was in Burnley. And, you know, it seems so obvious now, doesn't it? But there wasn't really any demand for African Caribbean beauticians in Burnley. And she thought, well, I'm going to have a second career. I'm going to have to change. So she trained to be a midwife, and she went on to be the midwife of Burnley. And she did go back to the States later, but you know, that's just a lovely story of somebody who came across, didn't fit in immediately, then adapted, and you know, had a good life. Right, this is a very unassuming man called Ralph Peart, and he, to me, kind of epitomizes the typical Windrush male passenger. That works so hard and so long to establish themselves, to bring their families up, to buy a house for the first time. And Ralph he just got his head down and he worked really, really hard. He lived in Reading and he had ambitions for his kids. And I'm finding that amongst lots and lots of the passengers, they might not be going to make it big, but they were determined their children were going to get educated and go on to greater things. And Ralph said to he had 3 children, but 2 of them in particular, he said, you're going to be a solicitor and you're going to be a doctor. And sure enough, his son, Iker, went on to be a King's Counsel, you know, not just a solicitor, the very cream. And his daughter, Shane, went on to be a doctor. Okay, it was a doctor of education. It was an academic doctor. But so, you know, so a lot of the families really, really sacrificed their own education to help their children. There's a guy called Dan Lawrence in Birmingham. He bought The Guardian, he listened to Radio 4. He was very well educated. He wanted to continue his education, but he just couldn't. But he made sure that his children did. And Liz, I know you know the Lawrence family, Levi and
yes,
yeah.
yes.
So, you know, I think Ralph's just an example of many, many, many like him. You probably forgot I mentioned a little boy called Aston McLachlan earlier, the 8-year-old that was in C class. This is his mum, Mary. And obviously money was tight and females had to travel in first class, and anybody under 12 unaccompanied had to travel in first class as well. So Mary was in first class along with her daughter, but little Aston, they put him in C class because his 2 big brothers were in C class and they were older than 12. So the family was split. Mary in first class with her daughter and the 3 boys in C class. But Mary, again, is fairly typical. She's not the only one, certainly. A religious lady. She thought she'd be welcomed at church in England. Really, really looking forward to going to church and worshiping as she did in Jamaica. And when she got there, and as I say, it was a common thing, she wasn't welcome at all. So what she did was she started worship in her living room. And then the living room expanded into renting premises elsewhere, and ultimately, you know, building a church. And Mary is credited with being the lady who introduced the first West Indian Black Pentecostal church in Britain. She later moved to the States, but her church was in Navarino Road in Hackney. But she, she's down in history because of that. Right, this probably satisfies the billing of strange people, was it, or odd people. The man in that photograph is Dr. Dilip Singh, and the lady is his wife, Paula Brown, although that wasn't her original name. She was Paula Braunschweiger, and she was German. And if we just talk about Paula's life to begin with, she had to flee Nazi Germany, and unfortunately her mum and dad died in the Holocaust, but she escaped. And by amazing coincidence, she was brought up in Sunderland, which is where I come from, and seems a very strange place to send a group of German refugees. But she became an optician. She met Dr. Singh, probably in Edinburgh, where he was training to be a doctor, and they went to Trinidad. They married, very much against Dr. Singh's family's wishes, because she wasn't an Hindu and they didn't approve of that. I think it was a tumultuous marriage. And in 1954, Dr. Singh murdered his wife, and he took her body, drove 40 miles, put her body in a black sack, threw it out into the sea, and obviously hoped that was the last he was going to hear about it. But perhaps understandably, the body washed ashore after a little while, and a fisherman picked it up, and they took her to the hospital, clearly dead. And they thought, well, we're going to have a post-mortem. Now, guess who they asked to do the post-mortem? Her husband, Dr. Singh. Now, he certainly wasn't going to say, yeah, I know who this woman is and I know how she died and so on. But there was another doctor present, so that was rather helpful. But at the end of the day, one of their servants said he'd heard them arguing, and that led eventually to his conviction, and he was hanged in 1955. So I always think if you've got 1,027 people in one situation, there just might be somebody with a very, very dodgy past. So Dilip Singh is the murderer on the Windrush. Although there was another man who did beat his wife to death, and he got away with manslaughter, even though it was the second time he'd attacked somebody with a hammer. But we'll not quibble over that. So let's end on a happier note. The oldest passenger I've been able to find is the bride in that photograph, the lady who holding the flowers, and that is Joyce Portney. Joyce is 98. She was born in Jamaica, a white Jamaican, and she's marrying in Jamaica. That's her husband, who was a serviceman, who they met at is it Upkeep Park, the military headquarters in Jamaica. And she told me it was the first time she'd worn stockings, and she was very uncomfortable. And but she's still going strong. She lives independently. She lives in Stourbridge, oddly enough, not too far away. And yeah, marvelous woman. She was on board the ship with her husband, and she was in first class as a female. She's the lady I mentioned that I share with 3 complete strangers. She said there were these 3 older women. I'd never met them before in my life. And I had to share with them, and the conditions were terrible. And she was used to traveling, so she knew what first class should look like. Her husband was in C class, so they were allowed to meet for 1 hour a day. And there was very strict segregation, not between colour, but between classes, between first class, C class. There were people stationed at the steps, making sure people didn't transgress. But yeah, Joyce Portney is a wonderful lady. And this is the one of the 2 ex-RAF, because John Richards wasn't in the RAF. This is Delissa Bernard. He lives in Wolverhampton. And as you can see, he's not in bad nick for his 90s. He is the dark-skinned guy, by the way. But yeah, he's getting smartened up, because I think that's probably the suit he wore to go to the palace to see his portrait getting unveiled. And it's another example of what their children achieved. Delissa worked in a factory, kept his head down, brought his children up well. His eldest son employs thousands of people. I mean, he is mega rich. I think he's a tax exile in Monaco. But the great thing is he employs thousands of people. His eldest daughter is Verona Elder, who some of you might know as an athlete along in the 70s. She competed for Great Britain in the Olympics. She won 2 gold and 2 silver in the Commonwealth Games. And the other 2 children, one's a firefighter and one's a paramedic. So what a contribution to Britain that Delissa has made. And that is the ship that we've been talking about. So I could talk about dozens of passengers, but don't worry, I won't. So that, yeah, that's just a cross section of who was on board, and what a very, very special ship it was, with very, very special people.
Well, Bill, that was fantastic. Right, stop sharing your screen then, and then we can all get back together. I'll look at how we can make the view work for me. Whoopsie daisy. We get a gallery. Right, lovely. That was amazing. And I'm so pleased that we've recorded you telling those stories, because this will be a recording that I'm sure will be a fascination to many, many people. Thank you for clarifying some of the, if you like, myths, and giving the background, the honest, researched background to the story of the ship, and the fascinating stories you mentioned. It's just terrific. June Elizabeth says it's up camp.
I was just going to type in thank you, June Elizabeth, but thank you.
Up Park Camp in Kingston. Well, that was just outstanding. Thank you very much indeed, Bill, and thank you for the many times that you've joined us on Black History Conversations, and I'm really pleased that we asked you to do this session, because that's really, really fascinating. And there's just, yeah, thank you so much as well to David. I'm sure Joe as well, for support that you've given as friends. Now, Candice is asking a question, and I'm just going to get the chat up here. So, Bill, what made you decide to do this research, and how long has it been since you first started?
Well, it's very timely, because the Guardian asked me the same question. What made me decide to do this research? And there's an article, I think it's in today's Guardian. I'm not sure whether it's in today or tomorrow, whether it's online, but I can send it to people. And my answer was really that I've just got this thing about looking at lists of names and wanting to know what lies behind it. I'd be the same with a war memorial. I'd want to know, well, where did he or she come from, and what happened after that, and what did their children do? So what I try to do is look at names on a page and turn them into real life stories, real people. And that might sound weird, but it's just something I enjoy doing. How long ago did I started? Probably could be 3 years ago. I'm up to about 800, and I think it'll probably take about another couple of years. Obviously, I don't do it. I used to try and do one a day, but I think things catch up with you, because it's hard to finish one, because people are always coming forward with more information, so you get dragged back a little bit. But it's and I don't know. I mean, if another, I don't know what to do at the end, because I don't think anybody's interested in 1,027 stories. Plus, I'm very wary that there might be some inaccuracies in there. But yeah, so I can put that off for a couple of years, really.
Now we've got a response here from Candace to say she's really interested in what's going to happen when you get to having got through it all. And Roz says as well in the chat, you are good in the chat these. Thank you very much. They like to add that when Bill starts looking at people, he never leaves anything to chance or guesswork. Well, I think we can see that. And it's fascinating that I'm so really surprised it's only 3 years. I mean, we've been running Black History Conversations now since 2020. I think maybe, did you start this during the COVID time? Must have been.
I need to double check. I think about 3 years, but
yeah. Absolutely fascinating. And Bill, obviously you're so responsive to all sorts of leads and things, because I'll just tell you my little story about Levi Lawrence. I was left in, I spend a lot of time in Australia, just to explain. So I was left in charge at my daughter's house in Melbourne because someone was coming to deliver a new 3-piece suite or a new settee. And the gentleman arrived and we were chatting, and it wasn't possible to get the 3-piece suite through the front door. So we had to take it down to the side and try and get it to the back door. Well, this wonderful gentleman who's delivering this huge, great L-shaped settee on his own was so determined to manage to get this suite in through the back. Anyway, eventually he managed it, and it was just kind of strange because he was just so familiar. He spoke like I speak in the Black Country, and he speaks just like me. And I said, where do you come from? Like, I'm in Melbourne, Australia. Where do you come from? And he says, I come from Birmingham. So I said, well, I thought you did, but what's your story? And he said, oh, my dad and mum, they came over from Jamaica. We realised we're both from Birmingham. And he said, in fact, my dad was quite well known. He was interviewed on the BBC because he came over on the Windrush. And I'm like, oh, so Levi Lawrence, a Jamaican descendant, Jamaican heritage, living in Melbourne, and I met in the most odd circumstances, but we've stayed really good friends ever since. And he was kind enough to share with me the BBC archives. Has he shared that with you, Bill? Yeah, you've got the records, the thing.
Yeah.
And I keep promising that we're going to listen to Mr. Lawrence's story one of these sessions, but it involves getting Levi in Australia, me wherever I am, the rest of you folks who are interested, and Levi's brother all together in order to do the session. But Levi's brother's spoken about his dad, and his mum's still alive and living in Birmingham. She's older now, of course. But yeah, it's
I found his
picked up all
grave.
these different stories. Sorry?
I found Dan's grave in Witten Cemetery. Witten Cemetery is huge, and the chances of finding it were slim, but I did find it, and yeah, it's
That's
buried
wonderful, isn't it? Look at the detail you go into. This is just truly remarkable. Okay, any other questions you can ask Bill, comments you want to make? That was just remarkable, Bill. Thank you so much. David, lovely to see you.
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously got nothing I can add to Bill's set presentation other than to say I've heard him talk about a whole load of other stories that are just as interesting. I'm quite sure he could do the same session again with a completely different set of stories and they would be just as good. So it's just never ending, the stuff he comes up with. It's really great.
I think what's special, David, is the Windrush passengers. They're the stars, aren't they? Because they're just all have amazing stories. It's incredible.
It really is absolutely amazing. I'm just thrilled to bits with it all. I'm just twiddling around with my PowerPoint presentation here just to bring a couple of things for our attention. So that's fantastic, David. Thank you so much for that. And the story of Mona Baptiste, maybe that's a story we ought to concentrate on one week, because I know there's so much the two of you can tell us about that. Okay then, so I think now, June Elizabeth, I don't know what stage of the game you're at the moment. Are you listening in, June Elizabeth? Obviously gone off to make a cup of tea.
No, I'm not going to make no tea. I don't drink tea or coffee. It's a funny thing, Liz. You remember last week, my picture disappear.
Yeah.
Right? You know when that gentleman goes, what's his name? That controls the things.
Oh, Simon, yes.
Yeah, so I was going to say to him, do something so that the picture not disappear.
Yes, well,
right?
put the picture back on again, will you? Because I can't do that.
Yeah, but it won't allow me. Remember last week it's saying the host has asked you to start, let me see, start my video. Oh, thank you. I'll come back now.
It's sometimes quite distracting, June Elizabeth, because you walk around all the time, you know, for good reason. And at one stage you were actually upside down in the screen, so I confess it was me.
I know you can look after me. I mean, I look stupid. It's like the time I fall asleep with my mouth wide open. I love you for looking after me. Oh, that's fine. I thought maybe it's frozen like last week.
No,
Yeah,
no.
so carry on. You called my
Right.
name.
I'll
Go
put
back to
your
where you
name.
were.
So, June
Do you
Elizabeth,
remember what you were saying?
you have been so, thank you for the compliment. You have been so busy over the last few weeks getting ready for Windrush 75, and you've now got lots of plans. So would you like just, well, first of all, thank you so much, Bill. Stay with us. This is just so wonderful. And we're just going to have a little catch up now on what's been happening. I don't think Garrett can join us. He's busy at some other event or whatever, but I'll tell you about what he was helping us with in North Wales in a moment or two. So June Elizabeth, so what's been going on? Wagwan?
Well, first thing I want to say greetings to everybody upon the platform, and Mr. Selassie Mugabe, thank you for your poem. I love it. I love it. I love it. And David, Bill, is it Bill David? Who am I talking to?
Bill.
Bill, your presentation as usual, first class. I can never get tired of listening to you. And you know, you sent me, well, I got one of your books. I got more than one of your books, from the footballers to the Mona Lisa, the princess book. Yeah. And I really love it when you come on to the Black History presentation. You lighten up the place, man. Yeah. And it's so interesting. The
Don't
only
give
thing
David credit
about
for the book as well.
yes, that's what I'm
David wrote the
saying.
book with
Well,
me.
yeah, it's, I can't wait. Did you? I know you said something earlier. That is that the princess book that you put online?
It's the biography of Mona Baptiste, and it's called
Yes.
What About the Princess?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I okay. So now, you know, you're doing all the people on the ship. How far have you got now?
I'm probably round about 800, and I've got another. I mean, well, I've got this dilemma when I get to the 1027. Do I then do the 300 crew members? That's so much energy I've got when I get there, but
Right.
I'm probably what 80% of the way through, I guess.
Lovely, wonderful, wonderful.
Absolutely
Yes.
incredible, isn't it?
It's, yes, that's lovely, lovely, lovely. Well, yeah, thank you anyway. And I know Lisa's thanked you and everybody else really enjoyed your presentation. I just want to just briefly mention that I will report back when there's nothing to report. At the moment, we're saturated with so much Windrush things. But briefly, yesterday, Northampton raised the flag outside the Guildhall. Then the steel band played the music while we walked across to the museum. And we finished our flag raising ceremony in the museum. We had quite a few speakers, but I told them no more than 3 minutes. I said, when you see me stand up, that means you better put a full stop at the end of your story. Yeah, so it's quite nice. And then we had the launch of the Windrush exhibition. And I thought they said it was going to be 12 minutes, but it went on for about 20 minutes. Really lovely, really lovely. Yes, and I will send you, if I haven't sent you, some clips, Liz. And what I did after that, in the evening, I took the train to Piccadilly, because Black Cultural Archives and Circa, they made a film about Windrush with certain people in the country, I think mainly Londoners. And they invited me and they filmed me by video because I couldn't come down. And then they said, if they use any of the film, they will let me know. And they invited me to Piccadilly Circus last night at 8 o'clock, and I went. and they had used some of my film, and I took a film of the film on the Piccadilly lights. I've never been to Piccadilly Circus, to that section where they got the all everything's up in on the lights, and they had the big ship and all the people that they'd interviewed. And all of a sudden I saw a picture of my mum and dad, and you heard me say this was the first Jamaican wedding in Northampton. Oh, and when I saw my mum and dad up on Piccadilly Circus lights, it really moved me, you know. And there was a couple more parts of the film of the interview that they put me up there talking. And I thought, oh God, my face didn't look good in that picture, but never mind. You could know it's my voice, yeah? So, and then I left there. I sent you a picture, did I? Me and Patrick Vernon.
Yes, you
Yes,
did.
I met Patrick there, and I left there and went to Brixton. I got to Brixton at 9, the Power Club on Brixton Square, and I said to them, I'm only staying an hour. I was going to leave Brixton about 11:30 to catch a 12:30 train back from Euston, but my son said, Mum, do not take the last train. It's full of drunk people, and sometimes it doesn't reach Northampton. It stops somewhere else, like Milton Keynes, right? So I've disciplined myself. Rodigan was playing. The music was really lovely, Jamaican mainly music, reggae, music that we like My Boy Lollipop, you make my heart go giddy up, and all them tune there, right? But I disciplined myself, and I said, I'm leaving at 10, and I was waiting for a friend to come, and he came at 10, and then I left about 5 past, and I got to Euston, and I had 7 minutes before a train, and I caught the train, and I got just after midnight. And I thought, well, that was a Windrush day. 4 different events, 2 in London, 2 in Northampton, and I had just come back from Mallorca the night before. So poor Sir Cliff, my husband, he's sleeping now because I've just brought him back from shopping. You know, I said, well, you haven't had no lunch. He said, it's too hot. I can't digest it. I said, what you had to drink? He said, a glass of water. So he's sleeping. And what I did, I just popped out. That's why I took my video off. And I just went, earlier I went to the university, and this is just come off the press, right? So this is a programme for next week. Northampton Windrush Generation Descendants UK, in partnership with the Global Ethnic Majority GEM Network and the Centre of Historical Study, presents the Windrush Legacy Celebration in Northampton. So we on the 4 page, we've got the Vice Chancellor, then we've got all the partners, a page, they've got a page each. And then the programme is part 1, Before Windrush and Beyond Heritage Tour. So that's the Windrush tour, which I mentioned earlier, where Marcia came and gave us some training. So I've just came by one of our Windrush ladies who was on the training to give her this straight off the what do you call it? Press. Yes, off the press.
That's the press.
And then that's part 1. And then part 2 now is at 6 o'clock. And then we've got the speakers from the Home Office. We've got Ras Jabalani, Mugabe friend, Trev Hall. He's over from South Africa, right? So there's a picture of him there on the programme. Yeah, that's your friend Mugabe. Yeah.
Yes, good.
Yeah. I'll take a picture and I'll send it to you, bro. And then we've got all the speakers from the Home Office. Yeah, there's 2 of them there. Right. And then 2 more there.
This is fantastic.
And then another one there. And then we've got Victor Richards. He's coming tomorrow night for the event tomorrow night, but on Friday he's only going to be doing some poetry. Yeah. And then you've got Marcella Day, Dr. Marcella Day. Yeah. And then you've got this gentleman, I would like you to get him before he goes back to Africa, Daniel Johnson. Tell you about him another time. There's Lorna. And then there's the guest, the main speaker, Dr. Juanita Cox. Okay.
Oh, right. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So because I'm a student at the university. Yeah. They asked me, would I put a Windrush event on last year? I said, no problem, it's done. And then there's a picture of me as the host and another gentleman. You can't see it good, so I won't bother take up any more time. But we put our heritage tour and put a picture of Marcella, Marcia, Gary, Dawn, and myself from the training.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so I went and collected that about 12:30 on the way taking my husband shopping. So if you pass me that, Paulette, please, thank you. So this was our program. Now, if you've got an address to send to me by email, I'll post you a couple of the programs so you can keep as a souvenir. This was the program from yesterday. Yes.
Wonderful.
And the program from yesterday, right? You got a foreword that me and the Vice Lieutenant of Northampton wrote. Then you got the program of the day. You got pictures of everybody that's on the program, and then you got the raising of the flag, and then you got a story about the Windrush exhibition, and then the last page now, more ways to celebrate. So it advertised what's happening tomorrow, the Sunday service, and the Friday part 1 and 2, the walk and the event, which I hope you're going to be able to come to. Liz, I've just checked with we've got a hotel there called Suddenly, yeah? And I just checked if they've got any rooms, and they have. They've got 2 rooms. They've got a few rooms, so I've booked 2 provisionally because Lorna might want to stay, yeah? And I will sort your room out for you if you do come down, Liz.
Okay, that would be wonderful.
Yes, wow. And it's 3 minutes from my house.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah,
Lovely.
so you'd be able to come. You'd be able to come by afterwards and have a meal with us. Yeah. Yes. So I think that's, and then the last thing that they're going to have. Oh yeah, after that, next Friday we've got an after party. That's why I want you to come, Liz. Right? And the after party, we decided it's going to be just women DJs. Yes.
Oh, right. Good.
So I'm organising that, and it's at the Wedgwood, which is, it's got an Italian restaurant downstairs and a venue upstairs. And the Wedgwood was one of the places, if you had money in the 40s or 50s, that's where you'd really want to have your wedding reception.
Right.
And that's where my mum and dad had their wedding reception in 1955 as well. Oh, yeah. Lovely. And my niece is a manager of the venue. So we get the venue and she doesn't charge us as Windrush generation.
Oh, jolly good.
Anywhere in Northampton, average is about 1,000, 2,000 to rent a venue, especially in town. Yes. So, right. And the last thing is the Northampton Royal Derngate, I told you, they got £15,000 a choir. So they're putting something on the 22nd of July.
All sounds great to me. Wow.
Yeah, so that's 7 different events I've been involved in. And they gave me an extra 2 weeks on top of my 2 weeks extension to put in my essay, me and this essay. So I had to put in mitigating circumstances. And I do not tell lies. So I told them my mitigating circumstances was due to being very needed to support all the Windrush events in Northampton. Yeah. And I had to be there to help them. They needed my help. And I said, also, Sir Cliff got a chest infection the week before we went on holiday. In fact, he only drank Coke while we were on holiday, because you know when you finish antibiotics. So he normally does the cooking and does the housework while I get on with Windrush. So I had to be doing that. So because of my disability, my hand was so painful that I had to take some medication, and that makes me can't concentrate. So they gave me 2 weeks extra mitigating circumstances. So I've got to give it in next Wednesday.
Right. Okay then.
Okay, so when I leave you, when we finish now, the Home Office, I started to reply to them. They want to know the address and they want to know this and they want to know that. So I'll just send them a text and let them know they get all that information today or next week.
I
Right.
don't know how you do it. It's just amazing.
So this just one thing I'll mention about the Windrush compensation, just on this platform, we are not very happy about there's elements of the Windrush compensation that does not really fit in. They're not really demonstrating with their policy. So if you was a regular person who always worked and due to the circumstances you could not work, right, because you couldn't show your ID, right, you're supposed to get 13,000 point something for every year that you did not work. But what we have found out, right, my colleague and myself and other advocates, we found out that they are not given anything for loss of employment. So we've had a couple of meetings and they've kind of said, well, you're supposed to get this every time. So then I showed them, well, how come you didn't give my client that he gave 70 grand to last year? You didn't give him anything for the 20 years that he wasn't able to work. You with me? So they've already committed that the policies is such, but they're not applying it, right? And it's come up so many times that we've requested a meeting with the head of Home Office. So while I was on holiday, he sent me a date in July, and I told him when I come back, I will look in my diary. So I confirmed that me and Glenda Caesar, we're going to meet with him and the head of policy to discuss why are they not paying people that element, which is not right, because that's supposed to be added onto their compensation. Yes, so that's the only thing I'll mention today, because it's very hot. Let somebody else get a say now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, June Elizabeth. And to everyone, obviously. Well, it's not necessarily because it's Windrush 75, but there are things happening in the Home Office that just
Yes.
to me.
What is Mrs. Braverman doing?
Let's just I'm just
closing down all the departments.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. So let's make that one of the themes that we're looking at next week, if that's all right.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that'd be fine.
To say though that then with Black History Conversations, we decided that we would start a program looking at the stories, and we've moved our way through these last weeks. Sorry, Melissa Williams was going to join us, but she's going to come and join us, I think, next week. Or the week after. She certainly couldn't make it today because she's in Glastonbury, so she's going to join us at some stage in the future. So that's going to be a useful one. But we had a very good discussion that day. Then we had Rudy Page and colleagues from Jamaica telling us about the activities planned over there. And Vilma McClymont joined us. Her book Little River is a really, really good read. Mind you, need a few days to read it. It's really great. So we're always grateful that we have support from Windrush International Allies Network that June Elizabeth is representing today, and Justice for Windrush Generations have been great too. And then we had last week, I've skipped over a couple there, I couldn't find the slides. We had an interesting session because we had representatives from 2 museums and the community colleagues they're working with. It's fabulous to hear that museums across the country have been working with communities across the country to make sure that the stories are told appropriately. So that was really interesting. I'll get around to posting all of these presently. Now, just it's a bit selfish, but this is what we were doing yesterday here in North Wales. Now, we've not been able to recognise Windrush in person here in North Wales for a few years, so we really made it very special. Although we weren't funded from either the Community Cohesion Pot or the Welsh Government Race Council Cymru Pot, we were fortunate that Bangor City Council bailed us out and provided funds for the catering for yesterday. We were very, very grateful to them. And we're also very grateful that we were joined by Justice for Windrush Generations. We were joined by Garrick Prayog and Roland Huslin, who spent the whole day with us, and we had 3 sessions in the day. It was a very long day. And they also joined the North Wales. We've got an African and Caribbean Association, and they had a celebration the same day, because obviously for everybody it was 22nd of June. So they went and were able to talk about the Windrush generation. But I'm just going to show you a few of the photographs I've just managed to pick up. So we had this in Penryn Hall in Bangor. We had lots of dignitaries sitting on the stage. We had the person in charge of the chair of Gwynedd Council, that's the county here. We had Derek Haines, who is now a freeman of Bangor. He's been a mayor for a number of years. And there on the left, you can see Karen Cross speaking, and there you can see Marcia supporting Karen. We presented Karen with flowers because what's really exciting is that we have been able to explore Karen's dad's story. His name's Jimmy. Oops, a daisy, this isn't the right order. So Jimmy Mullings was in the RAF for I think 35 years and ended up at RAF Valley. So he had a representative from RAF Valley. So you'll see that in just a couple of photos. Here we are. So here's Karen, here's Max from RAF Valley, Warrant of him at Max, and Karen's daughter and granddaughter. So this is a special son-in-law. So this is really special. You can hear RAF Valley flying over here at this very moment in time. Helicopters just passed me here. What's going to happen now is that RAF Valley in their museum are going to remember Karen's dad's story, and Karen and her mum, who's 93 now, she wasn't able to join us, but they're going to find out of the attic her dad Jimmy's best blue uniform, which they've got there somewhere, his medals, cap and photographs, and it's going to be a part of the museum display. So we're really, really pleased that we were able to put that forward. Now we had Jim Thakordin. Many of you will know Jim from presentations here on Black History Conversations. Well, Jim was able to talk to us. Now this is showing how the session was happening. Okay, so you saw that we've got people sitting on the posh seats at the council chairs. We're in the council chamber at Bangor Civic Hall, which is called Penryn Hall, and we don't just have the audience there for 3 sessions of the day. We also have 3 sessions on Zoom. So Jim joined us on Zoom and gave a fabulous presentation about his story, and also recognition of Enrico Stennett. And then Professor Robert Moore also spoke about Enrico Stennett. So we celebrated those 2 Windrush stories. And we also had a brilliant presentation by Garrick Prayog, which we've recorded from Justice for Windrush Generations. So that was a really, really good morning. Then we had a nice lunch with Jamaican patties and soup. We started the day with breakfast of peanut porridge and fresh fruits. It was all good stuff. So as you can see here, this is how the setup was, that we had the big screen. This is the afternoon session, and I'll just tell you a little about that. We were joined by Lola Ramakan, she's looking a bit serious there, Coy Roach from Jamaica, Lola from Jamaica, Bentley Cunningham from the Jamaica diaspora group. We all crowded round here in the afternoon for this session. Here's me taking a photograph of Vivian Crawford from the Institute of Jamaica. So it was brilliant that we'd actually got so many Jamaicans sharing the session. Here's Leslie as well. She's the treasurer of the North Wales Jamaica Society. So you can see we had lots of people joining us, both in the afternoon and in the evening. There's a photo of people taking photos and concentrating, but it's the only one I've got of Garrick. And unfortunately, I haven't got one of Roland, but I'm sure somebody took pictures. Then at one stage, we had a presentation from Tythe. So we're going to look at, this was the afternoon theme, how we can build bridges and link North Wales with Jamaica. So we're going to be able to have student exchanges. So this was the kind of setup I was working with. My own laptop in front of me, the town clerk's laptop over here, linked to the big screen. Oh dear, I tell you, it was fun to negotiate all that lot. Anyway, thank you, Windrush International Allies Network. And just go back. It's brilliant that we've had such great support, and I thank everyone very much. And then this is just to say I actually missed this session, having Kwame's running Disrupting Black African History sessions. So I managed to miss this first one, but this was about Empire Windrush, and he's going to be doing, this was fact-checking narratives. Unfortunately, it wasn't recorded. I don't know, Bill, if you knew about that session. No.
I knew about it. I went, I attended it.
Oh, lovely. Candace, could you just tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, it was, I had actually met Kwaku before, about a few years ago, when I did my Windrush book, and we were talking about this topic, and then I saw this, so I thought it would be good to join it, because I mean, I know I've written my children's book, but you know, it's just sort of skimming the surface, really. There's so much more to know and to learn. And even today, I mean, Bill, I absolutely enjoyed your presentation, to get all that depth about the passengers, you know, not just knowing them as numbers, but to actually hear some of their stories, you know, and some of the stories were, I was just laughing really at some of these stories. So it was a very, very interesting session. I would definitely recommend it, especially to people who maybe don't know much about the Windrush and are now learning about it, because what I liked about it was very factual, and he sort of explained why some of the myths have come up. And I think it's also, you know, he developed a little bit on what Bill said in the beginning of his presentation today, where you were saying about sometimes there's a confusion between people who came on the Windrush versus the Windrush generation, and the two things tend to get conflated, and it's quite hard to explain to people that it's not really quite the same and they're different stories. So I think that sort of a session would be really helpful. And I'm thinking some of the things that, you know, you're doing here, you know, Bill's presentation, you know, the fact-checking sessions, these could be good to put together for teachers and, you know, people who are trying to teach others about the Windrush, because unfortunately there are a lot of misunderstandings, and you know, I've noticed quite a few in the media as well, because I think for a lot of people, they're just beginning to learn about it. So yeah, I would definitely recommend the session. I thought it was very good.
Oh, good. Well, I really regret missing it, but Kwaku says it's not recorded. So we'll just have to sign up for the next one, Bill. But there's small cost for it, but I think it looked really, really well worthwhile.
Yeah.
So yes, that was a quick whistle tour of what I've done. But Candice, while you're here joining us, Candace, can you say how much we enjoyed hearing about your children's book when you spoke about it, the Windrush story? And I know you've got another book. Is your other book out yet?
Yes, the Ehrman book that came out last year.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
we missed having you join us to talk about that, but that also follows the story of the Caribbean Airmen. So that'll be useful, and maybe that will be able to be available at the RAF Museum. Have you got it in museums?
I've got it. It's in the Imperial War Museum.
Yeah.
They've been very, very helpful with it. I heard it was at the RAF Museum, but I haven't actually been doing a lot with them, so I'm not sure. I've heard it's there, but it's definitely in the Imperial War Museum.
Because it would be lovely to see if we could complement that. So I must make sure I get hold of a copy of it. So where do I order it through? you or?
No, not through me. I don't do anything like that now. You can get it through most booksellers online. Yeah, anyone can order it.
So that
Very,
would be lovely.
yeah.
So the title of the book is?
The Story of Britain's Black Airmen.
Right, well, that would be lovely. And Candice, perhaps we could welcome you in a few weeks' time, maybe to talk about that. And perhaps when we've got a little bit more of the story of Jimmy Mullins, then we can share that story too. So that would be lovely. Okay. So
can I just mention something? I know that Candace knows about a bookshop called thisisbooklove.com. I think Candace does quite a lot of work with them. They have an online bookshop, and I was going through their stock the other day, helping them try and sort out their stock. And I know that they have plenty of copies of Candace's books in stock now, having just taken a big delivery. So that would be another source for them. Obviously, you can get it from Amazon. But if you want to support an independent bookseller who specialises in, let's say, books for mixed heritage, particularly aimed at children, then thisisbooklove.com is an excellent place to go. You will pay £1 or £2 more, I suspect, but it's well worth supporting.
That's wonderful, David. So would they be interested to come and talk about how they find their authors and how it works? Can you put the details in the chat for me so I know?
Yeah, I'll put the website in the chat for you. They would definitely, I mean, Samantha, who runs that bookshop, would definitely be willing to come and talk. I don't doubt it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually with them tomorrow. No, Sunday.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I just didn't want to mention one particular person here because there are a few, but yeah, absolutely. I, completely second what David said. They are great, and they go around to a lot of festivals all over the country. They are just so active. I mean, they are one of a couple of people who really helped me when I first did my Story of the Windrush book.
I don't share your qualms simply because Samantha's a neighbour of ours, and I want to help her out. So
yes, no, that's great. I'm very happy with that.
Well, I think that's wonderful, and that would be a good link. So if you just let me have that link. And also, I don't know if Garfield Robinson, who runs Promoting Our Heritage,
yes,
you know Garfield?
I do with him as well.
Oh,
so that's why I was not wanting to pick one person, but yes, so all of those sort of community booksellers, you can get my books from them, and I mean, they're great. I wouldn't be able to do what I've been doing if it wasn't for their support.
That's wonderful. Garfield's a very good friend, but maybe we'll be able to get him to come and talk and tell us about what he's doing. Because in terms of Black history, I think we need to recognise those people who have campaigned for so long to help people get a better understanding of Black history. I know we've got an awful long way to go. So people like Jim Thackordin, who's written extensively over the years and spoken extensively, campaigned extensively. People like Professor Gus John, who over the years has done so much to raise issues about Black history. I'm not going to try and name any more at the minute because we need to think this through sensibly. But we need to respect and recognise, but also the people like the publishers and the booksellers who've just done so much. Where would we be without Bogle Overture and other publishers? So thank you very much indeed. This is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed there. I'm just copying that. So that's great, David. So www.thisisbooklove.com. What a lovely name. How nice. Right. So I'm not sure if there's anything else anybody else wants to add at this moment in time. It's really, really good to see you all, though. It's absolutely fabulous.
Yes. Sorry, I just wanted to say, I forgot, next week is our Heritage Walk. And so it starts at 3:15. We're going to meet everybody at 3:15. So I most probably be able to just tune in. And then I might just have to put myself on what I normally do on silence and then we're going to cut the ribbon for the Heritage Walk. Gary, you know, Marcia's partner,
yeah,
in the
Gary.
Black Heritage Walk, you know, he said he's coming down.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
you might be able to, because it's 4 now. If you're going at 4, when we cut the ribbon, and I've got 5 people cutting the ribbon, 2 people from West Northampton, 2 people from South, and the mayor in the middle.
Excellent.
And I just on the way home, I stopped at the local. There are not many of those haberdasheries where you can get those sort of things. And I said to her, I told them a little story, and she gave me a lot of ribbon. So I chose green, a shade of green. And then when I said, how much is it? She said, oh, you can have it. I said, no, let me pay you. Then I said, I'll tell you what, I'll take it as a donation, and I put your name as the donators of the ribbon. So I said to Secretary, put it in the glove compartment, so we're not looking for it next week. Yeah.
Good.
So I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I'll tune in, right? But I might let Gary say hello.
Wonderful.
And
Wonderful.
I might say to you, I might send you a message. We're going to cut the ribbon now, so it might be live launching
Live,
Windrush,
live activity.
Northampton Windrush Heritage.
Perfect. Perfect.
And I've got
That's
my
lovely.
colleague here, Paulette, right? She doesn't want to go on camera, but she wants to say hello.
Greetings, Paulette. Greetings, greetings.
Oh, greetings to you. I've heard so much about you.
Thank you. Quick.
She said she heard you say, what go on?
The door
All
looks
wonderful
extremely
things.
interesting now.
I'm sorry?
I said the door looks extremely interesting now. Paulette,
I'm sorry.
it's lovely
I'll
to
put you
hear
back
from
in.
you.
And you.
Yes.
And you.
No,
Take
no,
care.
what Paulette said, if you do come down, if you do come down, she would love to meet you because she's coming to North Wales to visit her friend.
Oh,
So
right.
I said, what I'll do, I might come with her, and we'd actually tell us where's the best hotel nearby where we're going to go.
Right.
Yeah,
well,
but we'll talk about that on another platform.
I'm sure you'll come here, and it's not a glorious day here, but I'm just going to stand up and pick my laptop up. This is going to be an interesting experience. Right, okay, I'm just turning my laptop. Oh dear, are you still there?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Press the wrong button here. If
Yeah.
I
Oh,
turn
that's
round and show you,
beautiful.
there is an amazing
Wow.
view.
Yeah.
don't
What
know if you
area?
can see-
What area is that? Is that Bangor?
This is Bangor. I don't know if you can see the castle in the distance.
Oh yes, we
My
can.
fancy-
Yeah.
That's
Yes, it's
castle.
beautiful.
Well, it is beautiful, but it's got such an awful history because this was built with monies that were generated by the endeavours of enslaved people on their plantations in Jamaica.
Yeah.
And this is why in North Wales we talk so much about links and building bridges, and this is why
Yes.
the whole session yesterday. And
Yeah.
hopefully Bangor is going to create a formal civic link with
Yes.
Maypen. So we had the mayor of
Yeah.
Bangor, we had the mayor of Maypen on the Zoom. It was just amazing.
Yeah,
So
Paulette's saying, wow. Yeah,
it is
yeah.
truly wow. So we welcome you to come up here, and I'll make sure I'm here, and
Yes.
we'll see how things
We've
go.
got to do it before you go back to Australia, you see.
Absolutely right. Okay.
Yes.
Then. So is
And
there anybody else who wants to add anything
Yeah, I
else?
just wanted to say, when I was in Mallorca,
Name
I
drop.
don't know if it was the Nurses Association of Jamaica or the Mary Seacole, they, you know, the lady that done the river, Little River,
Oh yes.
they went where she was doing a presentation, and she was doing the books for them and signing them for £15. So I asked my colleague, Dahlia Sterling, when I was in Mallorca last week, could she get her to sign one to June Elizabeth and Sutcliffe? And so I've got my little river book and it's going to come in the post. So I wanted her to get the money direct, because every time I try to do it through Woman's View, I've tried 3 times, it
You
didn't
must
go,
tell
and I
her
thought
how
it had
difficult
gone.
it is. Yes, tell her
Yeah,
how
so
difficult it is.
now it's being posted to me.
Okay, good.
Okay.
All
So
right, right. Thank you, Julie Elizabeth. Bill, was there anything you wanted to add? That was just
Ju-
an amazing
Just
session.
one thing, Liz, very, very briefly. You probably have seen there's an emerging scandal about West Indians that were sent back to the West Indies because of mental health problems. And one of the stowaways that I looked at, he's not on the passenger list, he's one of the 15 who got prosecuted. I found that in 1963, he was sent back to Jamaica and he had no occupation on the passenger list, which is very strange. And his address was Brookwood Mental Asylum in Surrey. Now, I tried to get hospital records. I went to the archives. They said they're embargoed till 2044. I tried a freedom of information request. That was rejected. And of course, I just dropped it then because I had no idea of this wider scandal. But I suspect he is one of the victims. We think about 500 who were basically deported because they had mental health issues and we didn't want to waste a bed, a hospital bed. Let's send him back to Jamaica and let him fend for himself. So I've let Jackie Mackenzie know, but I think that's probably one example of that scandal.
That's really so timely, Bill. One of the things I talked to Garrick Prayog about yesterday, because he and Roland came from London to Bangor, and Garrick lives in the Wirral, and he came to Bangor and spent the whole day with us, and he was so supportive. When this was the North Wales Jamaica Society running this event, but the North Wales Jamaica Society haven't got a lot of Jamaicans in it because there aren't Jamaicans up here. It's about a link between our country and Jamaica. Anyway, they were very, very helpful. But what Garrick particularly has, his special area is mental health. And last summer, we worked with Hilary Hickling, Dr. Hilary Hickling, on a long, over about 10 weeks at this time of Black History Conversations, but we were actually looking at how the trauma that people have experienced during the Windrush compensation scheme, and also getting their status confirmed. So Dr. Hilary Hickling was really helpful. Now her husband, who's sadly passed, Professor Fred Hickling, I knew well, and he was one of the psychiatrists or psychologists at Bellevue Mental Hospital. Now, I haven't spoken to Hilary yet, but I'm sure she must have some memories from Fred about that and about people returning, because they came to the UK and they worked as mental health practitioners in the UK. And there are other mental health services like ACCI in Wolverhampton, and we may be able to find some more stories about this, because this is a scandal on top of all the other scandals. You don't know how much further this is going to go, but thank you, Bill, for raising that point, and it is very important. And you know, if we can do anything to help to understand, because a lot of this has to come from the community and from links and putting these links together. So thank you for mentioning that, and I'll certainly raise that with Garrick. And I think we'll keep the Black History Conversations going into July, and then one of the sessions will specifically look at this issue and see if, you know, who we can link about it. But Bill, you'll see when that's coming up. Thank you very much for saying that. Thank you. Macapi, are you still there? Like a seance I was saying yesterday, are you still there? Are you still there? And we have a great huge television screen because now all councils can operate on Zoom. So this is a great way of making international links, and, you know, links around the country, which perhaps before have been as easy. So it's brilliant. I have to say we'll get it sorted better. McCarthy, you there, are you?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. McCarthy's in Tanzania. Okay.
I
that's
can't
good.
hear you.
Ah, can't you hear me? I can hear you. McCarthy. Right, okay. Well, Candice, I'm really glad you joined us today. That was delightful. And it was lovely to have heard earlier about the kind of things you've been doing. McCarthy, are you still trying to come in? And it's great to have you, David and Ro. It's really, really nice. That's really lovely. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Simon. I'm not sure if Simon's back from the school run, but he manages so well, and then he gives me the link to post. So I will be posting all the sessions that we've done for the Windrush series. And I thank you all for joining this afternoon. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. And thank you so much, Bill, especially. Really, really superb. Thanks a lot then. Now, when I end it, this will end permanently, like if Simon isn't there. Okay, let's give it a go. Yes.
Okay, one love.
One love, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye. Good luck with
Thanks.
everything you
Thanks,
do.
everyone. Bye.
Good luck,
Thank you,
Ricardo.
Bye,
everyone.
Liz.
Thank
Bye,
you, Bill.
David. Bye,
Wonderful.
Bye,
Candice.
Thank you,
Bye,
Liz.
darling.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.